literal golden thread that you can imagine ties together all of your conversations, that really brings in this cohesiveness to your brand, that allows people to build identifying factors that are yours, that ensures your message stays clear, that really doesn't create confusion in your personal brand. Welcome back to the Brand Is You podcast with Robyn Savage. I want to talk to you in this episode about how much of yourself is too much to show online or inside your personal brand. Now, I think this is a really important topic, and you may recognize, if you're watching this on YouTube, that my outfit for this episode is rather eccentric. You know, we've got like mismatching patterns, we've got bright colors, bright hair elastic. It's a bit, you know, to the normal person, maybe a little bit alarming. You know, it's like a little bit out there. I'm typically a jeans and t-shirt kind of gal. And I also have this side of me that is really playful and eccentric and colorful and patterned and expressive. And I made sure to build a personal brand that can hold both. You know, I can show up in a full-blown tracksuit with 4 days of unwashed hair, and my audience is not surprised. They don't even look twice. And I can show up in leopard print spandex and sneakers that I hand painted, or printed green pants that I had made in Vietnam and my husband's shirt. And they also don't do a second take, right? So I've built a personal brand that allows this entire version of myself, these multiple versions of myself, to all coexist within my personal brand. And I want that for you, okay? I have built brands that require me to dress one specific way. I have built brands that require me to be the same all the time, to always look put together, to always have my makeup done, to always have my hair perfect, or my things, or like I have done that, and it has become so restrictive to me over time, and it has become so monotonous and rhythmic and boring and limiting that I am literally here in this world to tell you that that is not what your personal brand is supposed to look like. It's not what your personal brand has to feel like. And by building a personal brand that allows your entire self to be expressed and to exist fully, is going to bring more life, more creativity, more attraction, more magnetism, and more volume to your work. And when your work has more volume, a bigger energetic aura around it, then more people can find you, and more people will start to identify with you and fall in love with you and recognize you, because the literal existence of your brand is bigger, okay? Imagine if I only showed up in one way. I mean, that's not bad, okay? There's nothing wrong with that. And if you are someone like Steve Jobs, for example, who just wears black on black every single day, then that is so good for you, and that's so natural for you, and that's exactly who you are in this world, then that is what you want your brand to be known for, right? That is how you want to represent yourself in the world. But I believe that there are a lot of us in the personal branding space who have been taught to be one way, right? To niche down, to get smaller, okay? To really restrict the opportunity that we give ourselves to show these parts of ourselves online or in our businesses that we've been taught to stay hidden. And I don't believe that that's true. So the biggest, most important thing that I need you to know in this moment in time, in this episode of the Brand Is You podcast, while you're building your personal brand, is that there is no too much of you to be present in your personal brand. There is no side of you that cannot be incorporated into your brand message. There is no version of yourself that is not welcome in your brand. But there are a couple of things that we need to know here. First and foremost, I do think it's really important for you to build your own set of boundaries around what parts of you do want to show online, right? Someone asked me this recently at my last in-person branding retreat. She said, are there any boundaries? Like, what's the strategy? What's your strategy on sharing your personal life online? And my response was, oh, there is no strategy, right? I just let it fly. I just let it flow. Whatever I feel like sharing, I share. Whatever I don't feel like sharing, I don't share. And she followed up with a really great question, and I want to share it with you today. She said, are there things that you don't share? And I looked at her and I was like, yeah, of course there are things that I don't share. And she asked me, like what? Okay. Now, I'm not going to tell you on here today what my answer was, because it was a really great answer for in person. It was intimate and it was hilarious, and it was, you could use your imagination and get there. But there are a ton of things in my life that stay private by choice, right? There are a lot of things in my life that stay mine because I want them to be that way. And a lot of those things directly impact other people in my life, right? My partner, my children, my family and friends. And those things are all mine and ours to cherish together. So they intentionally do not go inside my brand. However, any part of me that I feel safe and excited to share with you, any story, any version of myself, any style, any conversation, any thing that I've learned, any failure, any wardrobe change or hilarious joke or whatever it is that I feel confident in sharing online, I share. Okay? Now, I don't hold myself back. I don't restrict myself from sharing anything with you. It's always a feeling. Do I feel safe sharing this? Does this feel like mine to share? Do I feel excited to show up in this version of myself online? And if the answer is yes, then let your freak flag fly, right? Like, that's the rule. Own your weird. Be it. Okay? Now, the other thing is, there's a way to do this that builds your personal brand, and there's a way to do this that dilutes your personal brand. And if you want to show all of you online and you want to be multidimensional and multifaceted and wear t-shirts and jeans one day and dress in a ball gown the next day, and for that to be normalized in your personal brand, then here's what I recommend, okay? Discover your golden thread. And what I mean by that is have a consistent message that you constantly return to, this literal golden thread that you can imagine ties together all of your conversations, that really brings in this cohesiveness to your brand, that allows people to build identifying factors that are yours, that ensures your message stays clear, that really doesn't create confusion in your personal brand, and instead brings this excitement and edginess and newness to your brand that creates attraction and attention, because people are like, oh, I wonder what she's up to today. I wonder what she's talking about. I wonder what she's wearing. I wonder where she's going. I wonder what version of Robyn we're going to get today. But we're also creating this really important sense of safety and comfort within the brand that allows your audience to know what you're going to talk about, right? That they know what your beliefs are, that they know what you stand for, that they know what you care about, that they know what they're going to learn from you, that they know what problem you're solving, that they know who you are at this really high level, and that they can start to rely on what they are going to experience when they're in your world. So I'll use myself as the example, but because I'm constantly talking about the brand as you, whether I'm talking about your content strategy or your clear messaging or copywriting or, social media marketing, it doesn't matter what I'm talking about. It also doesn't matter what I'm wearing or how I look that day, because my golden thread, the thing that I am always bringing you back to, is the brand is you. Okay? So do you see how there's that level of consistency there that creates this spaciousness for the creativity and the volatility almost, right, of my personality and the way that I show up every day to be safely expressed in a way that keeps you feeling safe and in trust with our relationship, because I am constantly coming back to this higher level message. Okay. Now, I'll give you an example of where we could go wrong with this, where this would get really confusing and actually sabotage your brand reputation and brand relationships, is when you start talking about a different thing every single day that has no relevance from one day to the next. So if one day you're talking about green smoothies and the next day you're talking about Christian Louboutins and the next day you're talking about scientific predictions and the next day you're talking about copywriting and the next day you're talking about electrolytes and the next day you're talking about Mac products, and there's no golden thread that connects all of these pieces, then you are not building a personal brand. You're building a personal Instagram account that's just sharing your life on the day-to-day. A personal brand has a mission. A personal brand has a clear message. A personal brand has a distinct set of values, and they use a really strategic, clear communication strategy to get that point across, and they allow themselves, to be, or the brand allows that person to be fully expressed in who they are as they get the message across. So I want you to imagine that you are the biggest version of yourself that you could be. And I want you to imagine how safe that feels for you. And if you do not feel safe being yourself, then I highly recommend you listen to the podcast episode that was recently released about personal branding and personal development and how they overlap, because it really is my belief that the more you work on yourself, the more you know yourself, the bigger you allow yourself to be in your own eyes and in your own awareness, and the more confident you become in yourself, the more your personal brand is going to grow and hold and become recognizable and known, because you are allowing yourself to be this bigger version of yourself, right? So quick recap there, but go listen to the entire episode over at, or go listen to the entire episode about personal development and personal branding to dive deeper into that. But the more you know yourself and the more you allow yourself to be entirely who you are in your brand, the more you are really going to feel like your personal brand is where you belong. It's going to feel like I can be myself here. I can be genuine. I can be authentic. I can let my own personal freak flag fly without it threatening my success. So you'll be able to experiment with your own limits in terms of how much of myself do I want to allow into my brand. And once you've established that really clear golden thread, that really clear messaging at the highest level, then you can become more playful in your day-to-day, the way that you show up and the way that you can express that message and share that message. So I hope that this episode gives you the freedom and gives you the permission you need to really allow yourself to show up in your brand the way that you desire to. If you want to dance on the internet, fucking do it. If you aren't that person, then don't make yourself do it. But I think that it's really important that you know that those things, those parts of you can belong in your personal brand. They can be present, and you can dance on the internet in your underwear and be wildly successful for what you want to be known for, right? We don't have to be this one clearly defined, rigid, unchangeable, linear version of ourselves in order to be deemed, successful. We can allow ourselves to be fully expressed, to have clear communication, and to really let ourselves have fun in our personal brands as who we truly are. So a couple of takeaways for you. There is no such thing as too much of you inside your personal brand. The only amount of too much of you inside your personal brand is when you're crossing your own boundaries. If you are feeling unsafe in your personal brand because you're crossing your own personal boundaries, then it will start to feel really uncomfortable for you, right? You'll start to feel like you're presenting as someone else, or you'll start to do things that you think you should be doing in your personal brand that really don't feel in alignment with you. It'll feel like friction in your body. It will feel really uneasy. And that's That's not what we want. We want to create freedom in your personal brand that inspires you, that uplifts you, that excites you, that gives you these like nervous, fun butterflies in your stomach, but doesn't create fear in your nervous system. So I really encourage you to like find your edge in that, right? What are your own boundaries inside your personal brand? And on the other side of that, are you allowing yourself to really be your entire self in your personal brand? Are you still holding on to beliefs that you can only be one way? Are you still trying to niche down are you still trying to niche down when what you really want is to be liberated and free in your expression? So again, I mean, it is so clear the more we have these conversations that the brand is you on every single level, right? But there is no right or wrong answer here. The answer is what feels right for you and giving yourself permission to fully explore that and to fully be that and to establish that golden thread, that higher level message that allows you to be all of who you want to be in a really clear, concise way that doesn't confuse your audience. So let me know what your biggest takeaway from this was. I'm imagining that there are a lot of you on the other side of this listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or watching on YouTube thinking like, damn, I want to be more of myself in my brand. I want to let myself show up in these different versions, but I'm too scared. You know, I'm holding myself back, or I do strive for perfection, or I'm waiting to be better at this before I let myself show up as the fullest version of myself. And I invite you to sit with yourself and allow yourself to show up the way that you are, to allow your entire self to show up as you are, to push your own edges, to say, is there more of me that wants to be seen here? Okay. And this is not about getting attention. It's not about seeking validation. It's not about, petting your ego and saying like, let's shake our booty on the internet. It's not about that. This is about allowing your entire truth to be relevant and safe and okay and allowed in your personal brand and space. And those are two very different energies. One is soulful, like I want to be entirely expressed. I want my truth to be free and heard and seen because I know that that is of service. My truth is of service versus the ego, right? The dopamine hits, the addiction to likes, the needing things to go viral, the needing attention, the wanting that external validation. So check in with yourself again, like, am I doing this for the right reasons? Am I showing all of me or this part of me for the right reasons? Okay, I'll share a story with you, but for a while I was teaching a lot of feminine energy work, and there was a lot of our content was like dresses and gowns and selfies and this elevated version, like adorned in jewelry and put together. And over time, I just started to feel misrepresented by this version of myself that was showing up in that brand. And there started to be less and less space for this version of myself that was wearing messy t-shirts and, hanging out with my kids and just throwing it all together. And I closed that brand and I actually let it go. It was a 7-figure brand and I was running it with a business partner, and we decided to put an end to it because there was this version of myself that I had outgrown, that I no longer identified with, and that actually felt really limiting to me. And so I created a different brand that has all of like this space for all of me, where all of these different elements of myself are able to be held. So I share that example because I think that this happens to a lot of us, right? We either create personal brands that limit who we get to be, or we create a brand that funnels us and channels us in this one rigid way, and then we pigeonhole ourselves and we feel like we aren't actually safe to express all of who we are. So reflect. Okay, reflect, refine. And this is the process of personal branding. This is the story of the brand is you. Who am I now? Who am I within my brand? Okay, are the two of those things, who I am and who I am in my brand, in full alignment? Is there any part of me that is feeling shunned or repressed? Okay, is there a part of me that desires to be expressed, and am I willing to allow myself play into that? All right. The bigger you become in your brand, remember, the bigger your brand aura will become. The more you'll magnetize, the more opportunities you'll experience, the bigger your audience will become because you are stepping into the fullest version of yourself. So my biggest piece of advice for you inside this episode is to let yourself explore. Let yourself explore your own identities. Let yourself explore your own personality and your brand voice, and let yourself show up in different styles and clothes and find the right fit for you. Find the versions of yourself that are just wanting to be expressed and shared inside your body of work, and let those pieces of yourself, let those versions of yourself be loved. Let those versions of yourself be worthy enough to be seen online, and create a brand that allows them to be seen in a cohesive and clear way. All right? You can do it. It's going to take bravery. It's going to take practice and courage. But if I can do it, if I could get here, then you can too. And I know that as a fact. So if you want more, if you're loving these conversations, be sure to follow along and download these episodes so that you can return to them and continue to have these conversations on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. And if you're watching on YouTube, then lucky you, you got to see my super fun outfit today. Hit subscribe. Let's have these conversations weekly, and be sure to check out the YouTube shorts where I share little snippets and tidbits that are going to help you along your journey every single day. I love you, and I'll see you back here next week.